So let's start off by just talking a little bit about the Orton-Gillingham Method of teaching reading. It's a method that was developed in the 1930s by Samuel Orton and Anna Gillingham, and they realized that dyslexic kids were unable to learn to read in the traditional way, so they came up with a way that is multisensory, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, that uses the smallest pieces of our language, the phonemes, to put together and to help students learn them bit by bit and be able to blend those together and be able to use those in reading words and sentences. We adopted the Orton-Gillingham Method here at Darlington a couple of years ago because we were looking for a curriculum to help our students learn to read, and we were kind of tired of the old way of teaching where students were memorizing a lot of words and doing spelling tests and things like that. We wanted to give them skills that they could use in case they saw words that were unfamiliar. So the OG method, it's diagnostic, it's prescriptive in that we use it in small groups. It's diagnostic as the teacher sees students making mistakes, they can diagnose what kind of interventions need to be used to correct those mistakes. And it's prescriptive in that it does write out the next lesson plan as you're doing the current lesson plans.
And here at Darlington, you could walk in a classroom and see 4 or 5 different lesson plans going on with the teacher, the assistant, one of the learning specialists. There might be some independent work. And kids are grouped somewhat based on ability, somewhat based on wherever they are at that time. And teachers explicitly teaching rules that govern our language. And the students are learning the rules and the syllable types that help with the reading and the spelling.
So after 17 years with the Orton-Gillingham training, one of the things that I've realized is the differences in how I used to teach reading, which was a very whole language, read the story and really focused more on comprehension and not so explicitly teaching it. A lot of what we taught was through spelling and only teaching spelling, but not really how to break down a word or the meaning of words. And that's probably the biggest difference I see with Orton-Gillingham is just teaching children how to break down a word, how to look at each part of a word, each letter, the letters that go together to make sounds, and then if there's meaning attached to that. And so in doing that, the children are able to look at both real words and nonsensical words, and they can tell you what the word is and why it's that word, but then they can also, as they get older or above second grade, they can start looking at the prefixes and suffixes of words, which would go into more of the morphology piece, and really explain to you the root of that word, and if it was Latin or Greek, and then what that meaning of that word is.
Another thing about the Orton-Gillingham Method, and you can tell us how you use this in the classroom, is that it's multisensory. And what that means is that we're asking students to experience the information through their visual, through the auditory, through kinesthetic. So a teacher will have students repeat things while they're writing it, while they're seeing it, so we're hitting more than one different modality into the brain to help solidify those concepts in the brain. So what have you seen some in the classroom, or what do you use?
So we use tracing mats. Kids will use sand, little sand jars type things to have kids tracing in there just to help, like especially with our drill work. And we do teach cursive here, which is another important element to our Orton-Gillingham program because it is very multisensory.
I actually love teaching cursive. It's more fluid, and it's just like when you read left to right. When you write in cursive, you have that same fluidness because you're writing from left to right and you're never picking up your pencil. It also helps with the reversal of letters, which we still see up to second grade, which would be B's and D's, P's and Q's. Sometimes you have other letters that children want to reverse, but it's almost impossible to do that through using the cursive. So it fits right in to the multisensory piece because we want them to see it and say it and do it. And so lots of times, especially by the time they've reached second grade, the doing it piece is in their cursive writing.
So the OG is a method for teaching reading. It's the way to decode words, but it's also part of our literacy program. So we're also doing the grammar and the spelling and all those pieces together. So it's a complete literacy model that we're using. The OG is just intended to help them learn how to decode words and break the code, and then the rest kind of falls into place afterwards.
It's not just for dyslexic children, it is for any child. It's a best practice, and people that are in education totally get that terminology, but I think anybody can get that terminology because what's good for kids and makes them better is just the thing that we should do. And that's exactly what I see Orton-Gillingham is. I have kids, not only can they read, but they can write and they can spell. And I can't say that that's always been the case, but because of Orton-Gillingham, they know how to look at a word, they know how to break it down, but they also know how to put it back together. And so that's the one thing that I see more than anything, is that they're becoming better readers, writers, and spellers.